The afternoon sun shone through the windows of Joe's diner, casting warm light on the worn tables and red leather booths. Marcus Jenkins sat alone in his usual corner spot, where he could watch both the door and the street outside. The diner was quiet at this time of day, just how Marcus liked it. Marcus was 45 years old, with dark skin that showed a few lines around his eyes from years of smiling. Today, though, his face was calm as he sipped his coffee and read the newspaper. A wooden cane leaned against his table, a simple, sturdy one with a curved handle that had become like a part of him over the last 5 years. Before his accident, Marcus had stood tall and strong. He had been important in his community, though few people knew that now. The car crash that damaged his left leg had changed many things. He had to leave his job and learn to live with pain that never fully went away. But Marcus wasn't one to complain. He had made a new, quieter life for himself. "More coffee, Mr. Jenkins?" asked Sally, the waitress who had worked at Joe's diner for as long as anyone could remember. "Yes, please," Marcus said with a smile. "And maybe a slice of that apple pie I can smell." Sally grinned, coming right up, fresh out of the oven. Marcus folded his newspaper and looked around the diner. There were only a few other customers. An old couple sharing a meal by the window, a truck driver at the counter, and a young woman typing on her laptop. It was peaceful. That peace didn't last long. The bell above the door jingled loudly as 5 men walked in. No, not walked. They strutted in like they owned the place. They were all wearing black leather jackets with patches that read Road Kings. Their boots made heavy sounds on the floor, and their loud voices filled the quiet space. Marcus knew about the Road Kings. They were a motorcycle club that had shown up in town about a year ago. Most people tried to avoid them. "Hey, Sally, 5 coffees, and make it quick," shouted the largest man, who had a thick beard and tattoos covering his neck and hands. The name patch on his jacket read Diesel. Sally nodded quickly and hurried behind the counter. The old couple paid their bill and left, not making eye contact with the bikers. The truck driver stared down at his food. Marcus sighed quietly and went back to his newspaper, hoping to finish his coffee and pie in peace. He didn't want any trouble. The 5 men took over the largest table in the diner, laughing and talking loudly about their bikes and women. Their voices grew louder with each passing minute. Marcus tried to ignore them, focusing on his newspaper instead. Then he felt eyes on him. Looking up, Marcus saw Diesel staring at him from across the room. The biker whispered something to his friends, and they all turned to look at Marcus. They laughed. Marcus looked back down at his newspaper, feeling a familiar tension in his shoulders. He knew that look. He had seen it before. It was the look of men who thought they could push others around just because they could. Sally brought his pie, her hand slightly shaking. "Here you go, Mr. Jenkins," she said quietly. "Do you need anything else?" "No, thank you, Sally," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. "This looks delicious." As Sally walked away, one of the bikers stuck out his foot, nearly tripping her. She stumbled but caught herself. The bikers laughed. Marcus watched this happen, his hand tightening around his coffee cup. He had spent years avoiding conflict. After his accident, he had learned to keep his head down, to not draw attention to himself. It was easier that way. But as the bikers continued to look his way, Marcus knew that today might be different. Sometimes trouble found you no matter how much you tried to avoid it. And sometimes a man had to stand his ground. Marcus took a slow, deep breath and cut into his apple pie. Whatever happened next, he would face it with dignity. That was something no one could take from him. Marcus had just taken his first bite of apple pie when Diesel, the big biker with the neck tattoos, stood up from his table. The other bikers watched with smirks on their faces as Diesel walked toward Marcus. His heavy boots made loud sounds on the floor. "Hey you," Diesel said, pointing at Marcus. "You're sitting at our table." Marcus looked around, confused. He had been sitting at this same corner table for the past hour. There were still 3 empty tables in the diner. "I've been here for a while," Marcus said calmly. There are plenty of other tables. Diesel put both hands on Marcus's table and leaned down. His face was just inches from Marcus's. He smelled of cigarettes and beer. You don't understand, Diesel said with a cold smile. When we come to Joe's, that's our table. Always has been. The other bikers were watching now. One of them, a younger man with a shaved head, called out, "Just move. Man, it'll be easier for everyone." Marcus felt his heart beating faster, but he kept his face calm. Running away from bullies never worked. He had learned that long ago, both in his personal life and in his old job. "I'm almost done with my pie," Marcus said. "Give me 5 minutes, and the table is all yours." Diesel's face turned red. He wasn't used to people saying no to him. 5 minutes? I don't think so. Move now. Sally watched nervously from behind the counter. The young woman with the laptop quickly packed up her things and left. The truck driver stared at his plate, not wanting to get involved. "Is there a problem here?" Sally finally asked, her voice shaking a little. "No problem," Diesel said without looking at her. This guy was just leaving. Marcus took another bite of his pie, chewing slowly. He was not going to be bullied, not today, not ever again. But he also knew that fighting these men would be a mistake. He needed to stay calm and think. "I paid for this meal," Marcus said. "I have the right to finish it." Diesel laughed, a harsh sound that filled the diner. "Rights? You're talking about rights." He looked back at his friends. "This guy thinks he has rights at our table." The other bikers laughed, too. They started getting up from their table, moving closer to watch what was happening. Marcus saw the situation getting worse. 5 large, angry men against one disabled man wasn't a fair fight. But Marcus had been in tough spots before. He knew that showing fear would only make things worse. "Look," Marcus said, "I don't want any trouble." "Should have thought about that before you took our table," said one of the other bikers, a man with a long gray beard. Diesel reached over and grabbed Marcus's newspaper, crumpling it up and throwing it on the floor. "Oops," he said with a mean smile. Marcus felt anger rising inside him. But he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help him now. He needed to think clearly. "Diesel, maybe we should just sit somewhere else today," said the youngest biker, looking uncomfortable. "It's not a big deal." "Shut up, rookie," Diesel snapped. "This is about respect. And this guy," he pointed at Marcus, "needs to show some." Marcus looked Diesel in the eye. "Respect goes both ways," he said quietly. Something in Marcus's steady gaze made Diesel pause for a moment. Most people looked away when Diesel stared them down. This man didn't. "You got a smart mouth," Diesel said. He reached over and grabbed Marcus's coffee cup, then deliberately poured the coffee onto Marcus's newspaper on the floor. "Oops again." Sally gasped from behind the counter. The truck driver stood up, looking like he might say something, then thought better of it and sat back down. Marcus looked at his spilled coffee, then back at Diesel. There was something in Marcus's eyes now, a quiet strength that made Diesel feel uneasy for just a second. "You don't know who I am," Marcus said softly. "And that's your first mistake." Diesel laughed at Marcus's words, but there was something in the disabled man's calm that made him uneasy. People usually showed fear when the road kings pushed them around. This man showed none. "You think I care who you are," Diesel said, trying to sound tough. "You're just a guy with a bad leg sitting in my spot." The other bikers moved closer now, forming a half circle around Marcus's table. The young one they called Rookie looked nervous, but the others wore mean smiles. They were enjoying the show. Marcus took another bite of his apple pie, chewing slowly. His calm made Diesel even angrier. "You got a hearing problem too," Diesel said, raising his voice. "I said move." Marcus put down his fork and looked up at Diesel. "I heard you. I'm choosing not to listen." One of the bikers laughed, then quickly stopped when Diesel shot him an angry look. "You know what?" Diesel said, turning back to Marcus. "I don't like your attitude. He looked down and noticed the wooden cane leaning against the table. "What's this?" "You need this to walk, old man." Before Marcus could answer, Diesel grabbed the cane and held it up. "Nice stick. Looks expensive." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. The cane was more than just a walking aid to him. It had been a gift from his old police department when he retired after the accident. It had his name carved into the handle. "Give it back," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. "Or what?" Diesel taunted, swinging the cane around. "You gonna hop over here and take it?" The other bikers laughed, but their laughter died when they saw the look on Marcus's face. There was no fear there, only a cold determination that made even Diesel pause. "Last chance," Marcus said. "Return my property." "Or what?" Diesel repeated, but his voice had less confidence now. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "Or I make a call." Diesel snorted. "You calling the cops? Go ahead. By the time they get here, we'll be long gone, and maybe your cane will be broken into little pieces." "I'm not calling the cops," Marcus said, his thumb hovering over his phone screen. "I'm calling someone much worse." Something in his voice made the bikers look at each other. Diesel tried to hide his unease with more tough talk. "You're bluffing," he said. "Nobody's scared of your phone calls." Marcus held Diesel's gaze as he pressed a number on his phone. He had the number memorized. It was one he rarely used these days, but never forgot. "What you calling your grandkids?" One of the bikers joked, but his laughter sounded forced. Marcus put the phone on speaker and placed it on the table. The sound of ringing filled the quiet diner. Everyone was watching now, even Sally from behind the counter, and the truck driver who had been trying to mind his own business. After 3 rings, a woman's professional voice answered. "Chief Wilson's office." The bikers exchanged confused looks. Diesel's grip on the cane loosened slightly. "Hello, this is Marcus Jenkins," Marcus said clearly. "I need to speak with Robert, please. It's urgent." "One moment, Mr. Jenkins," the woman said. "I'll put you through right away." Diesel's face showed the first hint of doubt. The other bikers shifted uncomfortably. "Chief Wilson," the youngest biker whispered to the others. "Like, police chief." "Shut up," Diesel hissed, but he was staring at the phone now. There was a click on the line, and then a deep, authoritative voice came through the speaker. "Marcus, is that you? Everything okay?" Marcus looked up at Diesel, who was still holding his cane. "No, Rob, everything is not okay. I'm at Joe's Diner on 5th Street, and I have a situation here that needs your attention." "What kind of situation?" Chief Wilson asked, his voice instantly alert. "5 members of the Road Kings Motorcycle Club are harassing me and have taken my cane," Marcus said calmly. "One of them, who goes by Diesel, seems to think he can bully people without consequences." There was a pause on the line, and when Chief Wilson spoke again, his voice was cold with anger. "Is that right? Put him on the phone." The diner was completely silent. All eyes were on Diesel, who stood frozen with Marcus's cane still in his hand. The color had drained from his face, leaving him pale under his thick beard. "I said, put him on the phone," Chief Wilson repeated, his voice coming clearly through the speaker. Marcus held the phone out toward Diesel. "He wants to talk to you." Diesel shook his head, taking a step back. "I don't need to talk to nobody," he mumbled. The other bikers were looking at each other with worried faces. The one called Rookie whispered, "Dude, just give him back his cane." Marcus spoke into the phone again. "He doesn't seem to want to talk, Rob, but he still has my cane." "I'll be there in 5 minutes," Chief Wilson said, his voice hard like steel. "Don't go anywhere." "Never planned to," Marcus replied calmly. The call ended, and Marcus put his phone back in his pocket. He looked up at Diesel, whose tough guy act was falling apart by the second. "Who the hell are you?" asked the biker with the gray beard. Marcus didn't answer. He just took another bite of his apple pie. Diesel finally found his voice again. "You're bluffing." That wasn't really the chief. Marcus shrugged. 5 minutes. You'll see. Sally, who had been watching everything from behind the counter, slowly walked over. She looked nervous but determined. I think you boys should return Mr. Jenkins's cane and leave, she said. Her voice shook a little, but she stood her ground. Stay out of this, Diesel snapped at her, but his usual meanness was gone. Now he just sounded worried. Who is this guy? The youngest biker asked again, looking at Marcus with new eyes. One of the other bikers pulled out his phone and started typing quickly. After a few seconds, his eyes widened. Guys, he said, his voice low and serious. We need to go. Now. What? Diesel asked, turning to him. What did you find? The biker showed Diesel his phone screen. Marcus Jenkins. Look. Diesel's face went even paler as he read whatever was on the screen. Without a word, he carefully placed the cane back on the table next to Marcus. Let's go, he said to the others. This was all a misunderstanding. But as they turned to leave, the sound of sirens filled the air. Red and blue lights flashed through the diner windows. Too late, Marcus said, taking a sip of the fresh coffee Sally had brought him. 2 police cars pulled up outside the diner. The door opened, and a tall man in a police uniform walked in. He had gray at his temples and wore the stars of a chief on his collar. 3 officers followed him inside. Chief Robert Wilson scanned the diner until his eyes found Marcus. You okay? He asked, walking over. I'm fine, Rob, Marcus said. Just having some pie. Chief Wilson looked at the bikers, who were now standing in a tight group, trying to look smaller than they were. These the guys? The chief asked. Marcus nodded. That's them. The big one with the beard is Diesel. He seemed very interested in my cane. Chief Wilson's face hardened as he turned to the bikers. Eyes. All of you. Now. The bikers quickly pulled out their wallets, hands shaking. What's going on? The truck driver at the counter asked Sally quietly. Sally smiled, looking at Marcus with new respect. You don't know who he is. The truck driver shook his head. That's Marcus Jenkins, Sally said, her voice full of pride. Before his accident, he was deputy police commissioner in this city for 15 years. Trained half the force himself, including Chief Wilson. The truck driver's mouth fell open in surprise. He looked at Marcus with new eyes. Meanwhile, the officers were checking the bikers' IDs in their system. One of them whispered something to Chief Wilson, who nodded grimly. Well, Chief Wilson said, looking at Diesel. Seems like today isn't your lucky day. Chief Wilson stood tall in front of the 5 bikers, who now looked nothing like the tough men who had strutted into the diner earlier. They kept their eyes down, avoiding his hard stare. So, Chief Wilson said, crossing his arms, you thought it would be fun to harass a disabled man today. We didn't know who he was, Diesel mumbled, glancing at Marcus. And that makes it okay. Chief Wilson's voice was sharp. You think it's fine to bully anyone as long as they're not important. The other officers were still checking the IDs. One of them, a younger officer with a serious face, walked up to Chief Wilson and spoke quietly in his ear. Chief Wilson's eyebrows went up. Is that right? He looked back at the bikers with a small, cold smile. Well, this just got more interesting. Diesel shifted nervously from one foot to the other. What? We just wanted a table. That's all. A table. Chief Wilson repeated. According to my officers, 2 of you have outstanding warrants. And those bikes outside. We're going to need to check them very carefully. The biker with the gray beard swore under his breath. The young one they called Rookie looked like he might be sick. Take them outside, Chief Wilson told his officers. Check everything. And I mean everything. As the officers led the bikers out, Chief Wilson pulled up a chair and sat down at Marcus's table. So much for a quiet coffee, he said with a small smile. Marcus shrugged. You know me. I attract trouble. The 2 men looked at each other and shared a laugh that spoke of years of friendship and shared history. How's the leg? Chief Wilson asked, his voice softer now. Same as always, Marcus replied. Some days better than others. Outside, the officers had the bikers lined up against the wall of the diner. They were checking their pockets and searching their jackets. Other officers had arrived and were inspecting the motorcycles parked outside. Inside the diner, customers began to return. The news had spread quickly in the small town. People wanted to see what was happening, and many wanted to see Marcus. An older woman approached their table. "Mr. Jenkins, I just wanted to say thank you. Those men have been causing trouble for months, and nobody could do anything about it." Marcus nodded politely. Sometimes trouble finds the wrong person. More people came in, some just to shake Marcus's hand, others to thank him. Sally was busy serving coffee to everyone, her face bright with excitement. "You're a local hero now," Chief Wilson said, watching the people gathering around. Marcus shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. Just made a phone call." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Chief Wilson replied. "The right call at the right time." Outside, one of the officers called for Chief Wilson. He excused himself and went out. Through the window, Marcus could see the chief's face turn serious as the officer showed him something they had found on one of the motorcycles. When Chief Wilson came back in, his expression was grim. "We found drugs on 2 of the bikes, and one of them has a stolen gun." Marcus nodded slowly. "Not just bullies, then?" "No," Chief Wilson agreed. "Looks like the Road Kings have been busy." More police cars arrived. The bikers were handcuffed and put into separate cars. Their motorcycles were loaded onto a police truck. The people in the diner watched all this happening, talking excitedly among themselves. Some took pictures with their phones. "Your pie got cold," Sally said, coming over with a fresh slice for Marcus. "On the house, of course." "Thank you, Sally," Marcus said with a warm smile. Chief Wilson checked his watch. "I need to get back to the station. Will you be okay here?" Marcus looked around the diner, now filled with friendly faces and people who looked at him with respect and gratitude. "I think I'll be just fine." As Chief Wilson stood to leave, he put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "It's good to see you back in action, even if it's just for one day." Marcus smiled. Some things you never forget. After the police cars drove away with the bikers, Joe's diner buzzed with excitement. People kept coming over to Marcus's table to shake his hand or pat him on the shoulder. Some even asked to take pictures with him. Marcus smiled politely but seemed a little uncomfortable with all the attention. "Folks, please," Sally called out after a while. "Let Mr. Jenkins enjoy his pie in peace." The crowd slowly moved back to their own tables, but many eyes still looked at Marcus with wonder and respect. An older man with white hair and glasses sat down at Marcus's table. "Mind if I join you? I'm Bill Thompson, owner of this diner." "Nice to meet you, Bill," Marcus said, shaking his hand. "I've been coming here for years, but we never properly met." Bill nodded. "I'm usually in the back, but I wanted to thank you personally for what you did today. Those Road Kings have been scaring away my customers for months." "I didn't do much," Marcus said, taking a bite of his fresh pie. "You stood up to them," Bill said. "Nobody else did. Not even me." He looked ashamed when he said this. Marcus put down his fork. "Standing up to bullies is easier when you have connections like mine. Not everyone has a police chief on speed dial." Bill smiled sadly. "Still, I should have done something sooner. From now on, your coffee and pie are free for life." Marcus laughed. "That's not necessary." "I insist," Bill said, standing up. "It's the least I can do." As Bill walked back to the kitchen, Marcus noticed a young man watching him from across the diner. The young man looked nervous but determined. After a moment, he walked over to Marcus's table. "Mr. Jenkins," the young man said, "my name is David. I'm a reporter for the local newspaper." Marcus raised an eyebrow. News traveled fast in small towns. "I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about what happened today," David continued. pulling out a small notebook. Marcus thought about it for a moment. I'm not really one for the spotlight these days. It's an important story, David pressed. People need to know that they can stand up to bullies like the Road Kings. Marcus sighed. Sit down then, but keep it short. David sat down quickly, his face excited. So, you used to be the deputy police commissioner. For 15 years, Marcus confirmed. Before my accident. And you trained Chief Wilson? David asked, writing quickly in his notebook. He was one of my rookies, yes. One of the best I ever had. What happened today when those bikers tried to bully you? David asked. Marcus took his time answering. They made a mistake that many people make. They judged me by what they saw. A disabled black man sitting alone. They didn't see who I really was. David looked up from his notes. And who are you really? Marcus smiled. Just a man who doesn't like bullies. As they talked, Marcus noticed a woman standing by the door. She was in her early 40s, well-dressed, and looking right at him. After a moment, she walked over. Excuse me, she said to David. May I interrupt? David looked annoyed but nodded. Mr. Jenkins, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Lisa Watkins, principal at Jefferson Middle School. Marcus shook her hand, looking curious. Nice to meet you. I've heard what happened here today, Lisa said. And I have a favor to ask. We have a big problem with bullying at our school. Would you consider coming to speak to our students? Marcus looked surprised. Me? I'm not a public speaker. You don't need to be, Lisa said. You just need to be exactly who you are. Someone who stood up to bullies and won. Marcus glanced around the diner. Everyone was still watching him, many with grateful smiles on their faces. For 5 years after his accident, he had lived quietly, avoiding attention, almost hiding from the world. Now suddenly, people needed him again. I'll think about it, he said finally. Lisa smiled brightly. That's all I ask. Here's my card. As she walked away, David leaned forward. So, will you do it? Will you speak at the school? Marcus didn't answer David's question right away. The young reporter waited, pen ready to write down whatever Marcus said. But Marcus was looking at the school principal's business card, turning it over in his fingers. I need to think about it, Marcus finally said. It's been a long time since I spoke to a group. David wrote this down. But don't you think your story could help kids who are being bullied? Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. He looked at the screen and said, Excuse me, I need to take this. David nodded and moved to another table, still watching Marcus closely. Hello, Rob, Marcus said into the phone. Chief Wilson's voice came through clearly. Thought you'd want an update. We've got all 5 of them locked up. What are the charges? Marcus asked. Let's see, Chief Wilson said. Possession of drugs, carrying a stolen weapon, outstanding warrants for 2 of them, harassment, and I'm sure we'll find more before we're done. Sounds like they'll be away for a while, Marcus said. The interesting thing is, Chief Wilson continued, once we started questioning them, they started talking. Turns out the Road Kings have been running drugs through our town for months. They'd been using that abandoned warehouse on Pine Street. Marcus remembered the warehouse. It had been empty for years after the old factory closed down. How deep does it go? Marcus asked. Pretty deep, Chief Wilson replied. We're setting up a raid tonight. These guys were just the local chapter. There's a bigger operation behind them. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, Do you need any help? There was a pause on the line. Are you offering? 5 years ago, before his accident, Marcus would have been leading the raid. He had been known for his skill in planning operations like this. Just with the planning, Marcus said, my field days are over. Your brain is what we need, not your legs, Chief Wilson said. Can you come down to the station? Marcus looked around the diner. People were still watching him. Some were talking about him, pointing and smiling. After years of being almost invisible, It felt strange to be the center of attention again. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Marcus said. After ending the call, Marcus reached for his cane and slowly stood up. His leg hurt more than usual today, but he ignored the pain. He had more important things to think about. Sally hurried over. "Are you leaving, Mr. Jenkins?" "Duty calls," Marcus said with a small smile. "Let me pack up some pie for you to take with you," Sally insisted, rushing back to the counter. As Marcus waited, David the reporter came back. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," Marcus said, "but I need to go." "What about my story?" David asked. "And what about speaking at the school?" Marcus looked at the young man. He reminded Marcus of himself when he was younger, eager, determined, wanting to make a difference. "Your story will have to wait," Marcus said. "But tell Ms. Watkins I'll speak at her school next week." David's face lit up. "Really? That's great. On one condition," Marcus added. "No reporters." David looked disappointed, but nodded. "I understand." Sally returned with a paper bag. "Here's your pie, and I added some coffee in a to-go cup." "Thank you, Sally," Marcus said. As he made his way to the door, people stopped talking to watch him. An old man stood up and started clapping. Then another person joined in, and soon the whole diner was applauding. Marcus felt his face grow warm. He wasn't used to this kind of attention anymore. He gave a small nod to the crowd and stepped outside. The afternoon sun was warm on his face. His car was parked just down the street. As he walked slowly toward it, leaning on his cane, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. 5 years ago, his accident had taken away his job, his active lifestyle, and much of his confidence. He had faded into the background, becoming just another face in the crowd. But today, because of some bullies who picked the wrong man to harass, things had changed. Marcus Jenkins was back. Marcus drove to the police station, his mind already working on the raid plan. It had been 5 years since he had done this kind of work, but it felt like riding a bike, something his body remembered even after a long time. The police station was busy when he arrived. Officers moved quickly, preparing for the raid. When Marcus walked through the door, leaning on his cane, everyone stopped to look at him. Then, one by one, they began to smile and nod with respect. "Jenkins is here," someone said, and the words spread through the room. Chief Wilson came out of his office. "Marcus, come on in." Marcus followed his old friend into the office. Maps and photos covered the walls and desk. "This is what we know about the warehouse," Chief Wilson said, pointing to a large map. "There are guards here and here. We think the drugs are stored in this back room." Marcus studied the map carefully. "How many men do you have?" 15. Not enough for a place this size. Marcus nodded. "You need to be smarter, not bigger." He picked up a marker and began to draw on the map. "Send 2 men here to cut the power. Then 4 men at the back exit. The rest come through the front, but only after the power is out." Chief Wilson watched as Marcus drew the plan. "Just like old times," he said with a smile. For the next 2 hours, Marcus worked with the team, explaining every detail of the plan. The officers listened carefully, some taking notes, all showing respect. "Any questions?" Marcus asked when he was done. A young officer raised her hand. "Sir, how do we know they won't escape through the old tunnel system?" Marcus smiled. Not many people knew about the tunnels under the old warehouse. "Good question. That's why we're putting 2 men here, at the tunnel exit." He pointed to a spot on the map. The young officer nodded, impressed. "Anything else?" Marcus asked. No one had more questions. They were ready. "The raid starts at midnight," Chief Wilson announced. "Everyone get some rest. You'll need it." As the officers left the room, many stopped to shake Marcus's hand or pat him on the shoulder. The respect in their eyes made Marcus stand taller, despite the pain in his leg. When everyone was gone, Chief Wilson sat down across from Marcus. "Thank you for this," he said. "We needed your experience." Marcus shrugged. "Just doing my job." "Your old job," Chief Wilson reminded him. "You retired, remember?" "Some things you never really leave behind," Marcus said. Chief Wilson leaned forward. "You know, there's a position open. Special advisor to the chief. Desk job, no field work, but your brain would be a big help to us." Marcus was surprised. "Are you offering me a job?" "I've been wanting to for years," Chief Wilson admitted. "But you were so determined to retire completely after the accident. I didn't think you'd consider it." Marcus looked down at his cane. After the car crash, he had pushed everyone away, including his police family. The pain and the shame of his new disability had been too much. He had chosen to disappear into a quiet, lonely life. "What made you ask now?" Marcus wanted to know. Chief Wilson smiled. "Today, at the diner, when you called me, I heard something in your voice. The old Marcus. The leader. I realized you might be ready to come back, in some way." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "When would I start? Is tomorrow too soon?" Chief Wilson grinned. "I'll think about it," Marcus said, but he was already smiling. As Marcus drove home that evening, his mind was full of new thoughts. The day had started like any other, just a quiet man having coffee at his usual table. Now, everything was different. He had stood up to bullies. He had helped plan a police raid. He had been offered a new job, and he had agreed to speak to school children about bullying. All because 5 bikers had chosen the wrong man to harass. At home, Marcus made himself a simple dinner. As he ate, he looked at the framed photo on his wall, himself in his police uniform, standing tall and proud. It had been a long time since he had really looked at that picture. "Maybe it's time," he said to himself. 1 week later, Marcus stood in front of 300 students at Jefferson Middle School. The gym was packed. Teachers stood along the walls. Even some parents had come to hear him speak. Marcus leaned on his cane, looking out at all the young faces watching him. His heart beat fast. He hadn't spoken to a crowd in years. "Good morning," he began. "My name is Marcus Jenkins. Last week, something happened to me that changed my life. I was having coffee at Joe's Diner when 5 men decided to bully me because of how I look." The room was completely silent. Every eye was on Marcus. They saw a disabled black man sitting alone. They thought I was weak. They thought I was an easy target. Marcus paused. They were wrong. He told the story of what happened at the diner. He didn't make himself sound like a hero. He just told the truth. When he explained how he called the police chief, several kids smiled. "The bullies didn't know who I was," Marcus continued. "They didn't know about my past as deputy police commissioner. They just saw what they wanted to see, someone they could push around." Marcus moved away from the podium, taking a few steps toward the students. "But here's the important part of the story. What if I hadn't been a former police officer? What if I hadn't known the chief? Would that have made it okay for them to bully me?" The students shook their heads. "No one deserves to be bullied," Marcus said firmly. "Not because of how they look, not because of their disability, not because of their skin color, not for any reason at all." A young girl raised her hand. "But what can we do if we're being bullied? We can't all call the police chief." Marcus nodded. "Good question. The answer is, you don't face it alone. You tell someone. A teacher, a parent, a friend. Bullies want you to stay quiet. They want you to feel alone. Don't give them that power." For the next half hour, Marcus answered questions. The students wanted to know everything. About the bikers, about the police raid on the warehouse, which had been successful, and about his new job as special advisor to the chief. "So you're going back to work because of what happened?" one boy asked. Marcus thought about this. "In a way, yes. Those bullies reminded me of who I really am. For 5 years after my accident, I hid from the world. I was ashamed of my disability. I thought I couldn't be useful anymore." He tapped his cane on the floor. I was wrong. This doesn't define me. Just like whatever makes a bully target you doesn't define you. After the talk was over, Principal Watkins walked Marcus to his car. That was wonderful, she said. The students loved you. Would you consider coming back to speak again? I'd be happy to, Marcus replied. As he drove home, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. Tomorrow would be his first official day in his new job. Chief Wilson had given him an office with a view of the park. Marcus stopped at Joe's Diner for lunch. When he walked in, Sally waved and pointed to his table in the corner. It now had a small sign that read, "Reserved for M. Jenkins." Marcus laughed and sat down. Sally brought him coffee without being asked. "Heard about your new job," she said with a smile. "And about your talk at the school. You're a local hero now." "Not a hero," Marcus corrected her. "Just a man who decided to stop hiding." As he enjoyed his coffee, Marcus watched people come and go in the diner. Some nodded to him. Others stopped to say hello. He was part of the community again. His phone rang. It was Chief Wilson. "We've got a situation," the chief said. "Nothing dangerous, but I could use your advice. Can you come in early tomorrow?" "I'll do better than that," Marcus said. "I'll come in today. Give me 30 minutes. As Marcus paid for his coffee, he looked at the corner table where everything had changed 1 week ago. 5 bullies had seen a disabled man and thought he was an easy target. They had no way of knowing that their cruelty would not break him, but instead bring him back to life. Marcus Jenkins stepped out into the sunshine, ready to begin again.